Hey ladies and gentlemen, Wolf Crier here, and today I completed my GR103. We'll get to that gameplay in just a moment, what we're going to do in this video, because last time that I completed my GR100, I did not show off my gear and that sort of stuff. So in this video, what I'm going to do is play that GR, and then I'm going to take a look at the Rift, break it down for you guys, and then we're going to take a look at my gear that I was running for this GR. And I will timestamp when that stuff begins right up there, so make sure you check that out. If you don't want to watch the whole GR, that's fine. If you just want the breakdown, just skip right ahead, and there you go. Alright, so without further ado, here is my GR103. as I entered the rift, very good layout. I was very happy to see this for my very first rift of the day. And the mob type was something that I knew that I could relatively kill pretty quickly, especially on fire rotation, and most of the stuff could be dodged because it was mainly a range type of rift. So for the most part, I knew these would give me enough progression to at least stay even, and hopefully it had enough density so that I could keep that up. Now, I was very fortunate at the beginning of the rift to spawn that shield pylon, which was pretty beast. It allowed me to be able to take on those 3 elite packs all at the same time, and that's what really started to propel this rift and let me get further ahead, was when I was able to drop those first 3 elite packs, the 2 blue packs and the yellow pack. I mean, that was pretty nice. So very, very fortunate shield pylon, and it worked out for me, which was really good. Now for the second floor, I got here to the second floor, and I immediately thought, time to leave the rift. I really thought that this wasn't going to be a good rift simply because of the mob type. I hate the Fallen. There's no progression there for the little guys, and the big guys have such a big health pool, and there weren't really enough of them for me to progress the rift. But I was lucky in being able to drag all 3 yellow packs all the way through the rift for the most part and whittle them down every fire rotation. So that worked out really good, and that gave me that double pylon spawn once I killed all 3 of those. Nothing beats a speed and a conduit. Even if there's nothing there to take down with it, at least you can kill all the random trash along the way, that one group that showed up, and just get the hell off this floor. So very fortunate that I was able to kill those 3 elite packs and just drag them through the rift. Thankfully, they all followed, and I was able to whittle them down and spawn those pylons and get the hell off this floor, because I was not happy whatsoever, and I really thought in the beginning of the rift to just abandon the rift entirely. So thankfully, I did not, because otherwise this would not have been done today. And this was my very first rift of the day, so I definitely wasn't looking to save those keys. I was going to probably push some more, so I almost left it. But then we got to the 3rd floor, and I was pleasantly surprised by the mob type. I knew that the mob type would let me spawn the boss. The only problem was those mobs that jump on me are definitely not good for this build. So I did take a few more deaths in that rift, and thankfully I was able to catch that 1 elite pack that got stuck in the door and just whittle them down and spawn the boss. So that was pretty good. And then I got the binder. So she pretty much nailed that rift for me. It was the perfect boss. I didn't get somebody like Perdition who was going to be all over my face, and I was able to range her down and take down the rift. So that was pretty cool indeed. It was a great rift, great boss, and 103 is now done. I definitely think I can push higher with my gear that I currently have, and I've still got places to optimize. So what we're going to do right now is take a look at the gear that I was running during this GR. First up, we've got my SWK's Gaze. It's not ancient. It's got 146% wave of light damage, which is pretty beast. It does have Dex, Vitality, and 5.5% crit chance, and a socket. And I do socket the life percent gem because I find that this build can get very, very squishy. So I definitely like having the added 23% life. I do wish this had 6% crit, and I also wish it was ancient so that I could augment it later. But so far, it's a pretty decent piece of gear. Unfortunately, it just needs to be ancient. So maybe I'll do some more bounties, but I've already gone through like 70 or 80 bounty re-rolls, and this has not gotten to be anything useful. When it rolls ancient, unfortunately, I get really crappy stats, so we're going to have to do some more bounties, see what we can do with this SWK's, and hopefully increase that as far as my gear goes. The other non-ancient piece of gear I have is this pretty beast non-ancient witching hour. It's got perfect dex, perfect attack speed, and perfect critical hit damage, and it's got physical resistance as its secondary. So this is going to be very hard to replace unless I get a primal for the most part. I mean, I definitely want this piece to be ancient, but this non-ancient is pretty insane. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. Maybe I'll use some bounty rerolls for that as well. But like I said, it's going to take a primal pretty much for me to replace this piece of gear. Now let's take a look at the Pinto's Pride. It's got 20% fire, 557 dex, kind of low, and perfect crit at 6%, 11,946 life per hit. Life per hit is very useful in this build as far as keeping you alive, sustaining you through the rift. I like to have life per hit on my weapon, and this one rolled here. I'm pretty sure I'd still rather have vitality over here instead of the life per hit, but for now, it's a pretty decent piece, and I definitely wanted that fire percent. Now, this is one of my Caldescent augmented piece of gear, and that is with a 101 Caldescent's Despair, so 505 extra dexterity, and it does not have a secondary res. Instead, it's got Thorns damage, which is absolutely useless, and the Wave of Light damage is 140 out of the 150% that you can get up to, so I'd like to have a better piece of gear here, but for the most part, that's going to be tough to replace as well. Most of my gear is going to be hard to replace for the most part. Alright, let's take a look at the Sunwuko's gear. First up, we've got the shoulders. Now, I'd rather have cooldown here, but I need the life for the sustainability in a rift. Unfortunately, I had to roll for vitality. I'd like to have a piece with dex, vitality, all resistance, and cooldown percent. So hopefully I can get a better piece there. Plus it's got some space to move with the dex, but not much. Like I said, a lot of these pieces are going to be very, very hard to replace. Next up, I've got the Sunwuko's Paws. It is an ancient glove, and it does have 6% attack speed, 49% crit damage, 10% crit chance, 455 dex from a 91 Caldescent's Despair augment. So pretty beast pair of gloves right there. I think I'd rather have cooldown or resource cost reduction instead of the attack speed, but for now, that's going to be pretty irreplaceable, I think. Then we got the chest piece. I've got an ancient chest piece. No Caldescents on this one. It's got 619 dex, kind of low. Same with the vitality. It's pretty low. I did reroll for percent damage reduction from elites, and I definitely would prefer a secondary res on this. So this is a very, very replaceable piece of gear. And it's got no augments on it yet, so I think that's what I'm going to be rolling for the most as far as Kadala goes, and maybe a few DB crafting. So we'll have to wait and see on that. I'd like to get a better Sunwuko's Soul, but this is pretty good for now at least. Now my pants are primal. They have full dex, full vite, full resist all, and a 90 Caldescent's Despair on them. That will be increased to something over 100 eventually, but for now it's got a 90 on it. So 450 additional dex, which is pretty beast. Both my armor pieces use diamonds in it for the resist all to increase my resistances, that sort of thing. Now for the amulet, we're looking at a okay amulet, but at least it's ancient, and it's got a secondary resistance. It's got 10% crit, 85% crit damage, and dex, all of which, except for the crit chance, could be much higher, and I definitely prefer fire percent damage instead of the dex, but for now, this is what I got. This is what I'm rolling with, and at least it's got 180 poison resistance. So secondary res, very good, because I do use Harmony. Alright, now for the boots, I'm looking at an ancient pair of Crutus boots. It's mediocre. It's got near perfect vitality, 618 dex, a little bit of movement speed. I think I'd rather have some armor here or something like that, maybe regen, but it does also have Wave of Light damage already on it. I wish this was 15%, but it's not. and it does have a secondary resistance, which is pretty cool. No augments on this piece either as of yet. Now, to take a look at my rings, I do have pretty decent rings for both rings. My COE is a 195% increased damage for fire when it rolls around. It's also got 47% crit damage, which I will be re-rolling to try to get 50%. And it's got 6% crit, 605 dex, a little low on the dex, but it is an ancient ring, and I do have a 93 Caldison's Despair augment on it for 465 additional dex. So overall, it's a very, very good and hard to replace piece of gear. This ring is pretty epic for the most part, and my other ring is the Unity. It's got 47% crit damage, 5% crit. Wish that was 6, but 5's going to have to do it. 14% increased damage against elites, does have a secondary resistance, which is good, and I do have a 101 Caldison's Despair augment on it for 505 more dex. So pretty beast ring there as well. Both my rings are ancient with decent rolls, so for now they're going to be pretty hard to replace, barring a primal or something like that. So I'm not going to bother re-rolling these as of yet, unless the rest of my gear, my Sokrin's Gaze, my Pintos, and my Witching Hour, and my chest piece are all situated. Now for my weapons, first up, we've got Kayoshiro's Blade. Now that is a pretty beast weapon. One thing, guys, and I meant not to do this, but I did re-roll. That 9% damage during this rift was Vitality. I think it was like 890 Vitality, and I re-rolled it after the rift. So that did not have as much damage as it initially did. This does also have life per hit, which, like I said, is very useful for keeping yourself alive inside a rift. Life per hit on one of your weapons is an almost absolute must for this build, because you have no other way of regenning your life except for pots and maybe a little bit of regen on your gear if you roll it, but for the most part, you need the life per hit. So I try to make sure at least one of my weapons has that. Now this does not have an augment, even though it's an ancient legendary weapon, and it has 237% out of the 250% available additional damage when your Wave of Light hits 3 or fewer mobs. And I do use a Flawless Royal Emerald for that 130% additional critical hit damage in both weapons. Now for my other weapon, I do have an Ancient Vengeful Wind as well, and that is pretty beast. That is the exact item that I took into this rift, and it does have the increased maximum stat count Sweeping Wind by 7. Now I do wish that attack speed was something like cooldown or even percent damage at this point, but I really needed to roll the damage because overall initially this weapon was not that great. I think it had 2600 damage, which was pretty pathetic, and I definitely wanted to increase the damage. Now when I re-rolled this one to put that 9% damage, I did gain about 120,000 sheet damage, so that's going to be helpful going forward, and hopefully we can get another rift down this week, probably a 104, 105 at least, and we can edge our way closer and further up that leaderboard. So that is my gear, ladies and gentlemen. As far as my gems go, I'm looking at a 102 Zays. That was actually a 99 because I did upgrade it 3 times during the end of that rift. I have a 93 Bane of the Stricken and a 106 Bane of the Trapped. So my gems are pretty high level for the most part. I think that Bane of the Trapped is the highest gem I've ever had. And that's all because of the way this season goes with the increased DR potential for all builds, that sort of thing. So, and another thing, my Paragon is still under 1100, leaving me plenty of room to grow, especially if I start doing more rat runs, that sort of thing. Increasing my Paragon. I've got 6 Ancients that do not have Caldisons on them, so I definitely have room to improve there, and I have 2 pieces that are not Ancient at all. So I've got room to grow. You're looking at 8 augments that can be added, more Paragon that can be added, and 2 Ancient items, as well as an upgrade for my chest piece. So I think that I'm going to be able to push further into GRs and get up to my goal of top 100. Hopefully top 50 by the end of the season. So that's the goal, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you liked this video. Hopefully I gave you some insight into the build, that sort of thing, and what I was running when I did the GR. Thank you guys very much for all the support. I greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And if you guys want to support me even more, check out my Patreon page or follow me and subscribe over on Twitch. All of that helps me create videos, that sort of thing, and gives me more time to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for taking the time out of your day to watch my video. I greatly appreciate it. You guys have a great day. Peace.